Ferrari's first batch of major upgrades for 2024 did not deliver the results that the Scuderia hoped for, as they finished third fastest behind Lando, Norris and Max Verstappen in a race which had higher tyre degradation as previously expected. However, it also revealed the team's main issue that, if not dealt with, could become a bigger problem later on in the season. Ferrari was frustrated after the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, feeling it had missed an opportunity as its upgraded Formula One car finished third best behind Red Bull and McLaren. The much-anticipated major Ferrari upgrade of 2024 was not meant to be the Evo or 2.0 car that some had hyped it up to be before Imola. However, given that Ferrari started the season as Red Bull's closest competitor and even won a race, there was clear optimism that the upgrade would bring them closer to their main rival. A second consecutive defeat to McLaren, coupled with failing to beat Red Bull, was therefore a significant disappointment. Yet what truly annoyed some key figures was not the result itself, but what relegated Ferrari to third place. Charles Leclerc was visibly unhappy after a Grand Prix where he pressured Lando Norris for a time, but ultimately finished a solitary third, about 7 seconds behind race winner Max Verstappen and just ahead of Norris. Even though this was a podium finish on home soil for Ferrari, in front of the Tifosi and close to its Maranello headquarters, Leclerc's focus was elsewhere. "I mean, it's always very special to be on the podium here in Imola," he said. "However, obviously, I'm never satisfied with a P3. You always want to be on the top step. Considering everything, I think we mostly lost what could have been yesterday in qualifying, and this we will analyse." Team principal Fred Vasseur shared this sentiment, and while he wasn't inherently unhappy with securing a podium finish 8 seconds behind Max Verstappen, which would have been a strong result for Ferrari at most races this year, he still felt there was untapped potential, saying McLaren progressed as far as they did and put the blame on the bad qualifying rather than the race. So where did Ferrari fall off? Leclerc admitted that qualifying fourth was slightly disappointing after a promising start to the weekend, and given the fine margins between the top three teams and the difficulty of overtaking at Imola with only one limited DRS zone, track position going into Sunday's race was likely to determine the outcome. Imola's layout is not ideal for the Ferrari engine, which excels in power delivery off corners but lacks top-end performance. Leclerc also pointed out that Ferrari's engine strategy was lacking compared to McLaren and Red Bull. He felt that the battery deployment was slightly off, causing him to lose time on the start-finish straight at the beginning of his qualifying laps, which he could not recover. This might indicate a need to better adapt the engine's characteristics for a track like Imola. Leclerc was over a quarter of a second behind Verstappen and nearly a tenth slower than Norris by the time he reached the Tamburello chicane, which properly begins the lap. However, Vasseur wasn't entirely convinced that the energy recovery system was the main issue. While he acknowledged that they need to change their approach and to do something differently, he also suggested that this has to be downplayed a bit. Vasseur believed that although the run to the first chicane was crucial, the primary factor was Verstappen benefiting from a tow from Nico Hülkenberg. It's uncertain whether a better turn to turn one by Leclerc would have beaten Norris, let alone Verstappen. What seems more certain is that this was another instance of Ferrari underperforming slightly in qualifying and then appearing stronger on race day. The SF24 still seems a bit less potent over a single lap. As for whether a better result would have been possible starting further ahead, it seems likely that any of the top three cars would have had a good chance of winning had they had track position. Leclerc and Vasseur felt that his pace, which seemed to be weak compared to Norris in the final phase as the McLaren charged onto the back of Verstappen, was heavily influenced by running behind Norris for so long. Their contention is that a smoother race in clear air, controlling the pace and the tyres, would have resulted in Leclerc running consistently at the impressive pace he showed behind Norris initially on the hards. Leclerc would finish just over 6 seconds up the road from Norris's McLaren teammate Oscar Piastri, at 14 seconds off the win. However, he is confident that he knows where Verstappen and Norris are making that difference, and he believes it comes down to how they are managing the energy deployment from their power unit. So if Ferrari work that out, Leclerc thinks they will be fighting for wins too. Asked by Sky F1 whether he felt like he could have done anything more to improve his race at Imola, Leclerc replied, "Honestly, I don't think so. We had to cover for Oscar in the first stint. No way we can afford to lose track position on a track like this, so we had to stop. Oscar was pushing hard in the first few laps of the out, and then made it quite difficult for me to manage tyres in the first part of the hard tyres. Then I saw I was coming back on Lando and I was like, okay, maybe I'm going to try and put him under pressure now. But then obviously as soon as I got a bit closer, they started to push and then that was it. We never really saw Lando again. So they were strong. However, I really believe that today was all about track position. I think our race pace is very, very strong. I'm more optimistic than yesterday looking back at the qualifying, because this is where I think we are lacking on a weekend like this. And what makes me optimistic is that if I look back at the data, I thought we were losing in turn 2, 3, 4, which would have been tyre related again, but that wasn't the case. We lost everything in the straights, and they are doing something weird with the energy engine-wise, McLaren and Red Bull. So we've got to look into it, but nothing that is not possible to change. So we'll look into that, and once we fix that, I think we've got a real shot of going back on the top step of the podium. Vasseur never expected the first major Ferrari upgrade of the season to be a game-changer, even though it affected the entire car from front to back. The upgrade was extensive, but not enough to beat McLaren, let alone Red Bull. Leclerc was a couple of tenths off pole, with a deficit slightly below Ferrari's seasonal average to Red Bull, and looked stronger during the race. However, Ferrari still has work to do to refine its car setup to maximize performance throughout the weekend. This need was recognized even before the upgrade was fully implemented, and Carlos Sainz seemed particularly hampered this weekend. Sainz trailed Leclerc throughout the event, and while optimistic about what his teammates' performance suggested could be possible for Ferrari in upcoming races, he admitted to being puzzled by his own issues. The likelihood is that with Red Bull still improving its own car and McLaren's massive Miami upgrade proving more valuable at Imola, a good but not seismic Ferrari gain simply means it remains in the mix. That puts an emphasis on continued development now, with Red Bull refining its class-leading car and McLaren yet again proving prolific at adding a big chunk of performance in season. For Ferrari, it is important they accelerate their development pace, because when three teams are separated by just a tenth of a second, introducing an upgrade even one race earlier could move a team from P5 to P1. Therefore, speeding up the time to market for upgrades is crucial. However, precision is also important, because at this stage, teams along with Ferrari are chasing improvements measured in hundredths of a second, not tenths, so they must ensure that any new upgrades are effective before implementing them. Vasseur indicated it'll be 2 or 3 races before another upgrade arrives, suggesting that Ferrari's chances in Monaco and Canada will come down to getting the setup right and exploiting the maximum from its upgraded car. There is a feeling that Red Bull will still have easier, more commanding weekends on tracks that do not play to its car's weaknesses like Imola. But Ferrari and McLaren's respective developments have at least made the lead fight close enough that it can be influenced by team execution, weekend circumstances, and track characteristics, as well as the different strengths and weaknesses of each package. Whether or not this was just a bump in Ferrari's season, we will see very soon, maybe not in Monaco, but definitely in Canada at the beginning of June. But they were warned by McLaren, and we can safely say that the Papaya team is now Ferrari's closest contender. What do you think? Will Ferrari rise up and recover from this? Let us know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next video.